Hey guys, this time on Movie Reviews, we're going to be looking at A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood was directed by Marielle and stars Matthew Rhys, Tom Hanks, and Chris Cooper, and tells the story of a journalist that works for Esquire magazine and is tasked with doing a piece on Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood fame and do a story on what makes a hero, basically. This is inspired by a true story, and upon learning more about Fred Rogers, he also starts learning more about himself and how Fred Rogers affects his life. Guys, this is a film that I was really interested in, but a little skeptical for, mostly because last year we got the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is a fantastic documentary about Mr. Rogers. If you haven't seen that documentary, I really say check that out. But because of that coming out and then this coming out a year later, it to me felt like something of a cash grab of sorts, basing off of that fame from that documentary and kind of exploiting this resurgence of Mr. Rogers and people talking about him again with that documentary. And also, I was really interested in the fact that it had Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers, who, even though he doesn't look anything like Fred Rogers, I thought the casting was absolutely perfect. And also the director for this movie, who last directed Can You Ever Forgive Me, which is a film that I really, really loved from last year. So there was some stuff about it that was really going for it, but I was still worried. And after watching it, I can safely say that I was wrong, and this is a fantastic movie. Something I really loved about this movie was how its focus really wasn't on Mr. Rogers himself. It was on the main character, this journalist played by Matthew Rhys, who is learning about Mr. Rogers and therefore learning more about himself. And it's more about his journey of forgiveness with his father, with his relationship with his family. And that was something that was very beautiful and touching. And it's Mr. Rogers who is kind of this, idol in this film, this kind of mentor that he kind of goes to. He doesn't know what to think of Mr. Rogers at first, but eventually he opens up to him and really realizes what a wonderful person this man was. And this is something that this film does very well, which is really showcase just the power that Mr. Rogers had over people, how he could just talk to you and feel like a real person, like somebody that was really talking to you. He wasn't putting on, and he really cared about you. And I think Tom Hanks brings that side of Fred Rogers to the screen perfectly. This is such a good role for him, and it's a beautiful kind of role to, showcase who Fred Rogers was. And also Matthew Rhys does an excellent job in this film, and I think this is one of his best roles. Matthew Rhys is an actor that has really started to get more and more roles. He's kind of more of a background guy, except for in the show The Americans, where he's one of the main characters. But seeing him forefront in this movie really showcases just what a great actor he is. He is excellent in this film, and I love that the film really focused in on him and how Mr. Rogers kind of changes his life around. And also, I loved how this film, if you watch this film, it's basically set up like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in a lot of ways. It starts out with Mr. Rogers basically talking to the audience, telling the story of this character, this journalist, and how he got to where he was. And it's beautifully done. There's some great transitions in this movie that are basically based on the dioramas that are in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I'm talking about like the town and stuff like that. And it's a very clever way, making this movie really feel like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, as I said. And it's really cool. But also, this film is just extremely heartfelt. This is one of the most heart-wrenching movies I have seen this year that is beautiful and sincere down to the core. This movie just manages to be so whimsical and so authentic and so real at the same time. I loved every second of this film. It was just a wonderful movie to watch. It's really able to hit you in the heart, in the gut, and everything. It pulls no punches, guys. This is a very great film. And also, I was really excited to see Chris Cooper in this film because Chris Cooper is a great actor, and recently he hasn't been in much, really, as far as I know, but I thought he was excellent in this movie as the journalist's father, and their relationship with each other is something that grows throughout the film that I really did like. And also, this film does some interesting stuff that I wasn't expecting. Like, there is this really excellent scene of Mr. Rogers and the journalist in a diner, and Mr. Rogers just tells him that, you know, he wants to do this experiment with him where they just stay silent for an entire minute, and it is one of the most relaxing yet tense and profoundly beautiful scenes in the entire movie. It is emotionally resonant and just a wonderful scene out of all the film. And it was really cool because, I mean, you don't usually get this in film. There's usually not this amount of dead space for an entire minute in a film, and it was wonderfully done. If I had any problems with this film, it would be the first act of this film is very, very slow at times and kind of off-putting. And I think once you get past that first act of the film and you realize what this film is doing, how it's going to go, I think you really settle in for the rest of the film. Also, I would have liked to have seen more of I guess a little bit of the darker sides of Fred Rogers, because the movie mentions that Fred Rogers has a temper. His wife talks about this in the film, and we never really see that. And I think I understand why it's not there. I mean, you don't want to show the darker sides of one of the greatest, like, human beings that has ever lived. Just, like, a sweet, tender person, and you don't want to see that. But I thought it would have been something a little interesting to have, but I didn't need it, but I wish I did have it. Guys, overall, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is a wonderful love letter to Mr. Rogers and what he stood for. It is a great character study. It is a wonderful film with great acting, emotional scenes that feel so fulfilling, great acting. Tom Hanks, this is a fantastic role for him, and Matthew Rhys also does an excellent job. I'm going to give A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood an 8 out of 10. Well, guys, I want to thank you for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.